She only asked for leftovers, so Ibraim Traoré followed her home. What he saw changed everything. The sun beat down mercilessly on Ouagadougou's bustling central market as Ibraim Traoré wiped the sweat from his brow. At 42, he had spent nearly 2 decades building his restaurant from a humble roadside stall to one of the most respected establishments in Burkina Faso's capital. Today, like every Thursday, he personally supervised the delivery of fresh ingredients: yams, okra, and the prized tilapia from the nearby reservoir. "Patron, everything is accounted for," said Musa, his head chef, checking off the last items on his list. "The spices from Mali arrived this morning as well." Ibrahim nodded, his mind already cycling through tonight's preparations for the diplomatic dinner. As the owner of Savane, he had hosted government officials, foreign dignitaries, and wealthy businessmen, a far cry from his beginnings as a boy from a small village near Bobo Dioulasso. "We should return," Ibrahim said, checking his watch. "The Spanish ambassador's dinner won't prepare itself." As they loaded the last crates into their truck, a thin figure approached. Ibrahim noticed her immediately, a young woman, perhaps 16 or 17, with determined eyes that contrasted with her worn clothing. She stood with the dignity of someone much older, waiting patiently at a respectful distance. "Excuse me, monsieur," she said in mossy-accented French when Ibrahim finally looked up. "I heard you are Ibraim Traoré of Savane." Ibrahim straightened, recognizing the mixture of hope and hesitation in her voice. He'd heard such tones many times before, usually from those seeking employment or charity. "Yes, I am," he replied, his voice neutral but not unkind. "My name is Aisha. I live nearby with my brothers and sisters." She gestured vaguely toward the maze of streets beyond the market. "I was wondering if, perhaps, you might have any food that would otherwise be thrown away? Leftovers from your restaurant?" Something in her manner struck him. Unlike many who approached him with dramatic stories of hardship, she spoke with simple dignity, asking not for money or even fresh food, but merely what might be discarded. "You want our leftovers?" Musa asked, surprise evident in his voice. "Yes, monsieur. Anything you cannot use. I can come at the end of each day." Her voice remained steady, but Ibrahim noticed her hands tightening slightly around the frayed edges of her shawl. A memory flashed through Ibrahim's mind, himself as a boy, standing outside a restaurant in Bobo Dioulasso, hoping for scraps. The restaurant owner had chased him away with threats. That moment had crystallized his determination to own his own establishment one day. "Come tonight, after 8, Ibrahim found himself saying. "We often have unsold food that would only go to waste." Relief flooded her features. "Thank you, monsieur. I will be there precisely at 8. As she turned to leave, Ibrahim called after her. "Wait. How many people are you feeding?" She paused, calculating. 6, monsieur. My 4 younger siblings, my grandmother and myself." Ibrahim nodded, making a mental note. As she walked away, blending into the crowd, an inexplicable urge took hold of him. "Musa, take the truck back to the restaurant. Begin preparations. I will join you shortly." Musa looked confused but didn't question his boss. Once the truck departed, Ibrahim followed at a distance as Aisha navigated through the crowded market, past vendors selling everything from colorful fabrics to mobile phones. She stopped briefly at a vegetable stall, carefully selecting the cheapest offerings, haggling with practiced skill over what appeared to be 3 tomatoes and a small onion. The market gave way to narrower streets, where concrete buildings surrendered to more modest structures. The roads became unpaved, the air thicker with dust. Ibrahim maintained his distance, aware that his tailored shirt and leather shoes marked him as an outsider here. Aisha finally turned down an alley where children played with makeshift toys, their laughter contrasting with the evident poverty. She approached a small mud brick house with a corrugated metal roof, its walls showing attempts at repair. Before entering, she paused to adjust a piece of fabric covering a broken window, a small gesture that spoke volumes about her care for this humble home. Ibrahim stood frozen, watching as she disappeared inside. The sounds of excited young voices greeted her. Through the open doorway, he glimpsed children rushing to her, their faces lighting up despite their circumstances. Looking down at his expensive watch, a gift from the Minister of Commerce after catering his daughter's wedding, Ibraim felt an uncomfortable tightness in his chest. The Spanish ambassador's dinner suddenly seemed less important than what he had just witnessed. With a deep breath, he turned and began walking back toward his restaurant, his mind racing with thoughts he couldn't yet fully articulate. One thing was certain: Aisha would receive more than mere leftovers tonight. Ibraim couldn't focus on the preparations for the Spanish ambassador's dinner. Though his hands worked automatically, tasting sauces, approving presentation, greeting early guests, his mind repeatedly returned to Aisha and the small house in what he now knew was Sector 21, one of Ouagadougou's poorest neighborhoods. "Patron, is everything all right?" Musa asked, noticing his distraction. Yes, Ibraim assured him, adjusting the collar of his chef's jacket. "Ensure that we save substantial portions tonight. Good food, not just scraps." The dinner proceeded flawlessly. The ambassador praised the subtle blend of traditional Burkinabe flavors with European techniques, Ibraim's signature style that had earned him acclaim. Yet as dignitaries raised expensive wine and toasts, Ibraim found himself watching the clock. At precisely 8, as promised, Aisha appeared at the service entrance. Her eyes widened at the containers Ibraim personally handed her. Far more than leftovers, these were carefully prepared portions of the evening's premium dishes. "Monsieur, this is too much," she whispered, overwhelmed. "It would go to waste otherwise." He lied smoothly. "Can you carry it all?" She nodded, struggling slightly with the weight. Without thinking, Ibraim said, "Let me help you." Seeing her apprehension, he added, "Just to your street. I'm curious about Sector 21. I've never visited." They walked mostly in silence, Ibraim carrying the heavier containers. As they entered her neighborhood, he noticed details he'd missed earlier. Children studying by candlelight, elderly neighbors sitting together in quiet conversation, a young man repairing an ancient radio. Despite the poverty, there was community. "Here, those children," Ibraim said, nodding toward a group playing with a makeshift football of bundled cloth. "They seem happy despite everything." Aisha followed his gaze. Children adapt. They find joy where they can. When they reached her street, Ibraim transferred the containers back to her arms. "Thank you for allowing me to accompany you." "No, monsieur. Thank you for the food. My siblings," her voice caught slightly, "they haven't eaten this well in a long time." As she turned to leave, Ibraim found himself asking, "Your parents?" Aisha stiffened momentarily. "Gone. My father 3 years ago, malaria. My mother last year during childbirth. The baby too." Her voice was matter-of-fact, without self-pity. "And no other family besides your grandmother?" "An uncle in Koudougou. He sends money when he can, but he has his own children." She shifted the containers in her arms. "We manage, monsieur. Many have it worse." Ibraim nodded, speechless. He watched as she walked to her house, where eager faces already pressed against the window. The door opened before she reached it, small hands pulling her inside. The following evening, Ibraim found himself once again at the service entrance as Aisha arrived. This time, he had a proposition. "I've been thinking," he said, handing her the food. "You mentioned 6 people in your family. What if, instead of leftovers, I prepare a proper meal each day? Not charity," he added quickly, seeing her expression. "Perhaps in exchange for work?" "What kind of work, monsieur?" Suspicion edged her voice. "Nothing improper," he assured her. "Perhaps your older siblings could help at the restaurant. Simple tasks after school, washing dishes, preparing vegetables, and you have education." "I completed primary school, monsieur. I had to stop to care for the family. But I can read and write well in French and Moray." Ibraim nodded thoughtfully. "My bookkeeper needs assistance. Simple tasks at first, you could learn." Hope and wariness battled in her expression. "Why would you do this, monsieur?" Ibraim considered his answer carefully. Once I was in a similar position to you. Someone gave me an opportunity. It seems right to do the same." After a moment's hesitation, Aisha nodded. "I will discuss it with my grandmother." Over the next week, Ibrahim learned the full story of Aisha's family. Her brother Karim, 15, had been working odd jobs when he should have been in school. Fatima, 12, had shown remarkable talent in mathematics before the family could no longer afford her school fees. The youngest, twins Ibrahim and Isa, 8, still attended the local public school, but often missed days when they were needed at home or when there wasn't enough food to provide them energy for the long walk. Their grandmother, Mamu, a dignified woman with hands gnarled from decades of work, had welcomed Ibrahim with cautious respect when he visited their home. He saw immediately where Aisha had inherited her quiet strength. "You offer much, Monsieur Traoré," Mamu said, serving him mint tea in their best cup, chipped but meticulously clean. "What do you truly want from my grandchildren?" "A chance to help, madame," he replied honestly, "and perhaps to right an old imbalance." She studied him with eyes that had witnessed Burkina Faso's independence, coups, and periods of both hope and despair. Finally, she nodded. "The children will work hard," she promised. "They were raised to honor their commitments." That evening, as Ibrahim drove back to his large empty house in Ouaga 2000, the upscale neighborhood where he'd purchased property after his restaurant's success, he felt an unexpected lightness. For years, he had measured his achievements in material terms: the expansion of his restaurant, his imported car, his growing bank account. Now, for reasons he couldn't fully articulate, the prospect of helping Aisha's family brought him a different kind of satisfaction. "You've gone soft, old man," he murmured to himself, smiling slightly as he turned into his gated compound, where a security guard greeted him respectfully. Perhaps he had, or perhaps he was finally remembering what truly mattered. 3 weeks into their arrangement, Ibrahim watched with quiet pride as Karim expertly chopped onions in the restaurant kitchen. The boy had proven to be a quick study, absorbing Musa's cooking lessons with impressive focus. Nearby, Fatima organized receipts with meticulous attention to detail, her natural aptitude for numbers making her an unexpected asset to the accounting department. Aisha had proven herself equally capable. She arrived each day after ensuring her younger siblings were safely at school, working steadily until it was time to collect them. Never once had she complained about the long hours or tedious tasks of organizing invoices and entering data. "She has a gift for organization," remarked Madame Konate, Ibrahim's longtime bookkeeper. "With proper training, she could do much more than clerical work." Ibrahim nodded, making another mental note. Education would be the next step. Night classes, perhaps, or private tutoring. He'd need to approach the subject carefully, knowing Aisha's pride might make her resistant to what she could perceive as charity. That evening, as he walked through the restaurant checking on diners, Ibrahim was surprised to see a familiar face: Ahmed Diallo, now a prominent banker, but once a boy from Ibrahim's village. "Ibraim Traoré," Ahmed exclaimed, rising to embrace him. "The famous chef himself. Your success is the pride of our village." Ibrahim returned the embrace, genuinely pleased to see his childhood friend. "And you, managing the National Bank's international division. We've both come far." As they exchanged pleasantries, Ahmed lowered his voice. "I heard an interesting rumor that President Traoré himself dines here occasionally privately. Is it true?" Ibrahim's expression remained neutral. "We respect all our guests' privacy, Ahmed." Ahmed laughed. "Diplomatic as always. But speaking of our president, have you heard about his new initiative? Scholarships for promising students from disadvantaged backgrounds. Full funding through university." Ibrahim's interest was immediately piqued. "Tell me more." Later that night, after the restaurant closed, Ibrahim sat alone in his office reviewing the details Ahmed had shared. The Presidential Excellence Initiative was seeking candidates exactly like Aisha and her siblings, bright children whose circumstances had limited their opportunities. The application deadline was just 2 weeks away. The next morning, he approached Aisha as she organized delivery receipts. "I've been thinking about your education," he began carefully. And your siblings? She looked up, her expression guarded. We're managing with what we earn here, monsieur. Karim will return to school next term. For the others, there's a scholarship program, Ibraim interrupted gently. Government-funded, for students with potential but limited means. He watched as hope and skepticism battled in her expression. Such opportunities don't come to families like ours, monsieur. They might with the right application and support. He placed the printed information on her desk. Read this. Discuss it with your grandmother. I'm willing to help with the applications. That evening, Ibraim drove to Sector 21 at Aisha's invitation. Mamu had requested to speak with him directly. He found the elderly woman sitting outside their home, her dignity undiminished by the plastic chair she occupied. My granddaughter says you wish to change the children's lives, she said without preamble. I wish to help them access opportunities they deserve, he corrected gently. Mamu studied him. In my long life, I have learned to be wary of unexpected generosity. Men like you, successful, from our own country but now living in different worlds, sometimes help for a season, then disappear when the novelty fades. Her directness caught him off guard. That is a fair concern. Why this family, monsieur? Traoré? Why my grandchildren? The question penetrated beyond his carefully constructed explanations. Why indeed had he followed Aisha that day? Why had her situation affected him so deeply? When I was 12, he began slowly. My father died. My mother struggled to feed 6 children. I was the oldest, like Aisha. The words came with difficulty. He rarely spoke of his childhood. There was a restaurant owner in Bobo Dioulasso, a Frenchman. I asked him for leftover food for my family. Mamu waited, her eyes never leaving his face. He not only refused, but had his guards chase me away. Said street children were vermin. The memory still carried its sting. That night, I promised myself 2 things. That I would never go hungry again, and that if I ever succeeded, I would never turn away a child seeking help. Understanding dawned in Mamu's eyes. So when Aisha asked for leftovers, I saw myself, he admitted. But there's more. I built my restaurant, achieved success. I have more money than I need, a big house, no children of my own. He hadn't planned to reveal so much, but something about Mamu's directness demanded honesty. My wife and I couldn't have children. She died 5 years ago. Since then I've had success but little purpose beyond the restaurant. Mamu was silent for a long moment. Then with effort she stood and took his hands in her gnarled ones. Bring the scholarship papers tomorrow. We will complete them together. The following weeks brought a flurry of activity. Ibraim helped prepare detailed applications for each child, gathering school records, writing recommendation letters, and coaching them for interviews. The twins, Ibrahim and Isa, charmed everyone with their enthusiasm. Fatima's mathematical abilities impressed the education officials. Karim's determination to return to school while supporting his family resonated with the selection committee. For Aisha, however, the path was more complicated. At 17, she had missed several crucial years of education. The regular scholarship program wouldn't accommodate her situation. There are adult education programs, Ibraim suggested one evening as they worked late at the restaurant. You could earn your diploma, then perhaps university. Aisha shook her head, frustrated tears, threatening. By then, the others will be halfway through their education. Someone must work, must care for them. Ibraim understood her dilemma all too well. What if there were another way? A private tutor, perhaps? You could study while continuing to work. Here, that would cost too much. Consider it an investment in my business, he said. A more educated assistant is more valuable to me. She looked away, and he realized he'd wounded her pride. I don't need charity, monsieur. It isn't charity, Aisha. It's recognition of your potential. He paused, then added quietly, I never had children to invest in. Allow me this. Their eyes met, an understanding passing between them. Both had sacrificed their own dreams for their families. Both understood the weight of responsibility that came with being the eldest. "I will consider it," she finally said. As he drove home that night, Ibraim reflected on how much had changed in just a few short weeks. What had begun as a simple act of charity had evolved into something more profound. These children, particularly Aisha, had awakened something in him he'd thought long buried: hope for the future and a sense of purpose beyond his own success. The news arrived on an ordinary Tuesday. Musa burst into Ibraim's office, his typically calm demeanor shattered by excitement. "Patron," the president's office called. "President Traoré himself wishes to dine here next week, privately." Ibraim looked up from the inventory sheets he'd been reviewing with Aisha. "When?" "Friday evening. A private room for 8 people. Musa's eyes were wide. "They asked specifically for your signature dishes. The president has apparently heard about your thieboudienne with a Burkinabe twist." Ibraim nodded, maintaining his composure despite the significance of this development. President Ibraim Traoré, who had taken power in Burkina Faso amid complex political circumstances, was known to live modestly and avoid ostentatious displays. That he would choose to dine at Savane Doré was both an honor and a potential complication. "We'll use the garden pavilion," Ibraim decided. "More secure, and the evening breeze will be pleasant. Aisha, adjust next week's reservations and deliveries accordingly." After Musa left, Aisha remained, her expression thoughtful. "This could be a opportunity, monsieur." "For the restaurant, certainly," Ibraim agreed, already mentally planning the menu. "No, for the scholarship applications," she clarified. "The decisions are due soon. If the president himself knew about qualified candidates." Ibraim shook his head firmly. "We cannot use his visit to lobby for personal favors, Aisha. That would be inappropriate." "Not lobbying," she insisted. "Just ensuring the applications receive proper attention. The scholarship bears his name, after all." The idea lingered in Ibraim's mind as preparations for the presidential visit consumed the week. Every detail required perfection: the menu, service, security arrangements. The staff worked with focused intensity, aware of the significance. Even the twins, who sometimes helped with small tasks after school, sensed the excitement. "Will we meet the president?" Isa asked, eyes wide as he folded napkins into elaborate shapes, a skill Musa had taught him. "No," Ibraim said gently. "You'll be home that evening. This is a private dinner." "But he's named Ibrahim too, like me," the boy protested. "We could talk about our name." Ibraim smiled at the child's innocent enthusiasm. "Perhaps another time." The evening of the presidential visit arrived with unexpected complications. Heavy rains, unusual for the season, had caused flooding in several neighborhoods, including Sector 21. Aisha arrived late, soaked and distressed. "The water is rising," she reported. "Our street is already flooded. Grandmother is worried about the house." Ibraim immediately grasped the severity of the situation. "Take my car. Move your family to higher ground if necessary. Go now." "But the president's dinner." "We'll manage. Family comes first." As Aisha left, Ibraim refocused on the imminent dinner. The president's security detail had already arrived, discreetly surveying the restaurant and securing the premises. At precisely 7, a modest motorcade pulled up and President Ibraim Traoré entered, flanked by advisors. Ibraim was struck by the president's unassuming presence. Though barely 40, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone far older. He greeted Ibraim with a warm handshake. "Monsieur Traoré, your reputation precedes you. I've heard your restaurant bridges tradition and innovation, much as our country must do. You honor us with your presence, Mr. President," Ibraim responded, leading the group to the prepared pavilion. The dinner progressed smoothly, the conversation flowing from cuisine to culture, agriculture to economic development. Ibraim served each course personally, explaining the local ingredients and traditional techniques adapted for contemporary tastes. "This dish," the president remarked, savoring the main course, "reminds me of what my mother prepared when I was a boy. Yet it's elevated without losing its soul." That's what Burkina Faso needs, progress that honors our roots. As dessert was being served, a delicate mango soufflé with baobab cream, Ibrahim's phone vibrated in his pocket. Excusing himself momentarily, he stepped away to find 3 missed calls from Aisha. When he called back, her voice came through filled with anxiety. "The water is rising faster, monsieur. The lower section of Sector 21 is being evacuated. Emergency services are overwhelmed." Ibrahim felt torn between his professional obligations and his concern for Aisha's family. "Are you safe?" "For now, yes. We're at the community center on higher ground. But many families have nowhere to go and the rain continues." Making a swift decision, Ibrahim returned to the presidential table. Waiting for an appropriate moment, he addressed the president directly. "Mr. President, please forgive the interruption. I've just received concerning news about flooding in Sector 21. Many families are being displaced and emergency services are stretched thin." President Traoré's expression grew serious. "How severe is the situation?" "I have staff members who live there. Their reports suggest it's worsening by the hour." The president turned to one of his advisors. "Contact the emergency response coordinator immediately. Redirect resources if necessary." To Ibrahim, he added, "Thank you for bringing this to my attention. Sometimes official reports lag behind reality on the ground." Encouraged by the president's responsiveness, Ibrahim continued, "If I may, Mr. President, Your Excellence initiative for education is providing hope to many families in areas like Sector 21. I've personally seen how transformative the prospect of education can be for children with limited means." A flicker of interest crossed the president's face. "You're familiar with the program?" "Yes, sir. I've been mentoring a family, orphaned siblings being raised by their grandmother. Their applications for your scholarship program are currently under review." The president nodded thoughtfully. "Education is the foundation of our nation's future. What impresses you about these particular children?" "Their resilience, sir. Despite losing both parents and facing daily hardship, they maintain exceptional academic performance when given the opportunity. The eldest sister sacrificed her own education to care for her siblings." "Names?" the president asked, pulling out a small notebook. "Aisha, Karim, Fatima, Ibrahim, and Isa Ouedraogo," Ibrahim replied, surprised by the direct interest. The president wrote the names down. "I make 99 promises about special treatment, but I will ensure their applications receive fair consideration." His expression softened slightly. "Their story resonates with me. I too was raised by my grandmother after losing parents young." As the dinner concluded, the president thanked Ibrahim for both the meal and the information about the flooding. "Your restaurant lives up to its reputation, Monsieur Traoré. But more importantly, your concern for your community speaks well of you. Burkina Faso needs business leaders who remember their social responsibility." After the presidential party departed, Ibrahim closed the restaurant early, allowing staff to check on their families. He drove immediately to the community center where Aisha had taken refuge with her siblings and grandmother. The scene was one of controlled chaos. Dozens of families gathered with whatever possessions they had managed to save, children sleeping on makeshift pallets, volunteers distributing blankets and food. Ibrahim found Aisha organizing a distribution system for the limited supplies. "Even here you take charge," he observed, helping her carry water containers. "Someone must," she replied, simply. "The children need structure, especially now." Looking around at the displaced families, Ibrahim made another decision. "My house in Ouaga 2000 has several empty rooms. Your family could stay there until the flooding recedes." Aisha hesitated. "And these others?" Ibrahim understood immediately. Her concern extended beyond her own family. "The restaurant has storage, space that could be converted temporarily. It's not ideal, but it's dry and secure. We could accommodate perhaps 20 people." By midnight, Ibrahim had arranged transportation for Aisha's family and several others with young children to his home. He'd also prepared the restaurant's storage areas with mats, blankets, and basic necessities for more displaced families. As he finally drove home in the early hours, exhausted but satisfied, he reflected on how different his life had become since that day he had followed Aisha home. His success had given him means, but she had given him purpose, a reminder of where he came from and what truly mattered. 3 months later, on a brilliant October morning, Ibraim stood in the courtyard of his restaurant, supervising the final touches for a special celebration. Colorful banners decorated the walls, tables were arranged in a semicircle, and extra chairs had been brought in to accommodate the numerous guests. "Is everything ready?" Aisha asked, appearing at his side. She looked transformed. Confidence had replaced the wariness that once characterized her bearing. The simple but elegant dress she wore had been purchased specifically for this occasion. "As ready as we'll ever be," Ibraim replied, adjusting a floral arrangement. "Are the children prepared?" "Grandmother is giving them final instructions," Aisha said with a smile. The twins are too excited to listen properly. The event they were preparing for marked a culmination of the journey that had begun with a simple request for leftovers. All 5 Ouedraogo children had been selected for the Presidential Excellence Initiative scholarships, an outcome that had seemed impossible just months ago. For Aisha, the program had created a special accommodation. She would receive adult education while continuing to work at the restaurant, with a path to university if she maintained her grades. Karim had been enrolled in a prestigious technical high school with a culinary focus, a perfect fit for the cooking skills he'd developed under Musa's guidance. Fatima was now attending the Mathematics Academy, her prodigious talent finally receiving proper nurturing. The twins had places at the primary feeder school for the National Lycée, their education secured through graduation. Guests began to arrive, officials from the Education Ministry, teachers from the children's new schools, friends from Sector 21 who had supported the family through difficult times. Mamu greeted each one with dignified gratitude, her pride in her grandchildren evident in every gesture. As the ceremony was about to begin, a murmur ran through the crowd. A ministerial vehicle had arrived, and to everyone's surprise, President Ibraim Traoré himself stepped out, accompanied by only 2 security officers. Ibraim moved quickly to greet him. "Mr. President, this is an unexpected honor." The president smiled. "When I saw the Ouedraogo scholarship ceremony on my schedule, I decided to attend personally. Their story stayed with me after our dinner conversation." Looking around at the gathered community, he added, "Besides, this represents exactly what the initiative was designed to achieve, identifying talent regardless of circumstance." The ceremony proceeded with heightened significance. Each child received their official scholarship certificate, presented by the president himself. When Aisha's turn came, President Traoré added a personal comment. "Your sacrifice for your siblings exemplifies the spirit of Burkina Faso. Resilience, family, loyalty, and determination against odds. Your own educational journey may be unconventional, but it will be no less valuable." Later, as refreshments were served and the formal portion of the event concluded, Ibraim found himself standing beside the president, watching Aisha introduce her siblings to their new teachers. "You've done something remarkable here, Monsieur Traoré," the president observed, "not just supporting one family but creating a model." "A model, sir?" "Of private-public partnership in community development." The president gestured around the courtyard. "Government scholarships, business mentorship, community support, working together rather than in isolation." Ibraim hadn't considered his actions in such broad terms. "I simply followed my conscience, which is precisely what makes it authentic." The president paused, then added, "I'm establishing a council to advise on expanding the scholarship initiative. Your perspective would be valuable if you're willing to serve." Surprised but honored, Ibraim accepted. As the president departed, Ibraim found himself surrounded by the Ouedraogo family, Mamu, Aisha, and all 4 children embracing him with unrestrained joy. "You've changed our lives forever," Aisha said, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "You've changed mine as well," Ibraim replied honestly. That evening, after the celebration ended and the guests departed, Ibraim invited the family to stay for dinner at the restaurant. As they sat together at a table overlooking the garden, he reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. I have a proposition, he said as they finished their meal. The house in Waga 2000 is too large for one person. Since the flooding, it's felt right having your family there. He looked directly at Mamu. I'd like you all to consider making it your permanent home. Mamu studied him with the same penetrating gaze she'd given him months ago. And what would you ask in return, Monsieur Traoré? Only that you allow me to remain part of your family's journey, he said simply. I never had children of my own. Watching these 5 grow and develop has brought meaning to my success that I never expected. Mamu's weathered face softened. You speak of giving us a home, but perhaps you are really seeking one yourself. The insight struck Ibraim with its accuracy. His large house had never felt like a home until it was filled with the voices of children, with Mamu's wisdom, with Aisha's determined spirit. Perhaps you're right, he acknowledged. Then it seems we can help each other, Mamu said, reaching across to lay her hand on his. Family is not always about blood, Ibraim. Sometimes it's about who God brings into your life when you most need them, or when they most need you. As night fell over Ouagadougou, Ibraim walked with the family toward the car that would take them all home. Not to Sector 21, nor to his formerly empty house, but to a new home they would create together. Aisha walked beside him, already discussing plans for converting one of the rooms into a study space for the children. I never expected this outcome when I asked for leftovers that day, she said quietly. Nor did I when I decided to follow you home, he admitted. Sometimes, Ibraim reflected, the most profound changes begin with the smallest actions. A young woman asking for discarded food, a successful man remembering his own past, and the simple human connection that created a bridge between their separate worlds. In that moment, he understood with perfect clarity. In helping Aisha's family, he had finally found his own.